Today I am going to be sharing different projects and home decor ideas using different mediums, some items that I already had on hand and others that I recently purchased. Hopefully this will give you some inspiration as to what you can do to customize pieces in your home. Hey everyone, my name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. I love sharing high-end home decor and DIYs on a budget. If you enjoy content like that, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and join the familia by subscribing. I'll be creating 5 different projects for today's video. I have also partnered with Cricut in order to answer a lot of commonly asked questions in regards to using your Cricut maker, as well as tips and tricks that I have learned along the way when creating items with your Cricut maker. Let's get started. Alright, so for this first DIY, we're going to be starting out with this little sign that I got at my local Dollar Tree a few days ago actually. These are brand new. And I like the little frame and I even like the thankful on it, but I didn't care for the print. And I had an idea about using it for a beautiful wreath for my front door. So I went ahead and removed it from the frame. So I went into my Cricut design space and I decided that I wanted it to say welcome since it is going to be on my front door. I selected the font that I wanted and I adjusted the letters to my liking. Once I'm done with my design and I'm completely happy with it, I click over to make it and then I can see what it looks like on the mat that it's about to go in to the actual machine. And I double check everything, make sure everything is okay and to my liking, and then I hit continue. I select which one of my items that I use regularly is on the actual mat, and for this it's just going to be premium vinyl, and then I send it on over to my machine to cut. Once it's done cutting, I remove the piece of vinyl from my cutting mat and then I began to weed it with my weeding tool. Now basically weeding is just peeling off the excess vinyl that you don't need from your decal. And this cute little tool definitely helps you get into all of those little creases and inside crevices from inside of those letters. Now normally whenever I want to recreate a sign that is already existing, I usually paint over the existing sign, but I want to use that thankful for something later. So what I decided to do was take some foam board, again from my Dollar Tree, very inexpensive, and I am just going to cut out the same exact size from that thankful little plaque that you see right there and create a blank white sign. No painting, nothing. Just cut out from the foam board and you have a brand new sign to apply your decal. Now, in order to apply your decal onto your sign, you're going to need some transfer tape. Now, whenever I'm creating decals for my shop, I always use high quality transfer tape. However, whenever I'm just doing signs for myself, I just use some inexpensive clear contact paper and it works great for items that you do for yourself. Just a little inexpensive money-saving tip. Now, in order for the decal to come off very nice and smoothly, it's always good to use that little scraper to make sure it adheres onto your surface. And then all you have to do is insert the little foam piece back into the frame. And I am still trying to use as much of the items that I already have on hand, with the exception of this beautiful ribbon that I just bought at Walmart. Oh my goodness, it is so charming and I thought it was perfect for spring. So I did get that. Everything else, however, was already in my stash. The flower remnants and that embroidery hoop. So I know this is not the way you create a bow, but this is just the method that I have always used and it's worked just fine. I usually do 3 hoops like this and I hot glue the ends and then I stack them on top of each other, tie them together, and create a bow. Then I cut the little tail that's gonna stick down from the bow, and I like to cut the ends in like a little, I guess maybe fishtail. I don't know what it's called, but I like to cut it like this. And then I do something a little weird with my ribbon that I go over it. I like to lay it over like this, and then I bring it around, and then I twist it in the back. I glue everything together, but I do like to twist it so that you see the finished side of the ribbon on both of the tails that hang down, if that makes sense. Now I put the ribbon to the side, and then I placed the little welcome sign on top of the hoop. I kind of wanted it off center, and I decided to place the flowers on the other side a little bit off center as well. So I just began gathering all of the stems that I had left over from previous bouquets that I had dismantled to create other DIYs, and I began hot gluing them on to the little hoop. I did add some additional jute twine around the stems that were glued onto the hoop, just to make sure that they would actually stay on and not just, one of these days pop off. I flipped the embroidery hoop over in order to attach the bow with some jute string as well. I also added a little bit of hot glue to the back of it just to make sure it stayed put and didn't move around. Then I adhered the little sign on with some hot glue. Now, since there wasn't a lot of surface area on the hoop touching the back of the frame, I did have to reinforce the back a little bit. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I did use some of the little squares from Dollar Tree in order to add a little bit of height to connect the back of the frame and give it that extra surface area to adhere to the hoop. Now the next DIY are for those of you who love DIYs without words on them, because I know there's a few of you. Now you can definitely create beautiful DIYs using your Cricut without using words, and I'm going to show you how. I had these 3 little plaques in my craft stash. These are actually from Plaid. You can get these at your local craft stores, and I thought it would be perfect to recreate ceramic tiles. And before I can do that, I had to prep them, and what you see me doing here is painting the inside of these little plaques with my white Adirondack chalk paint. After that was dry, what I did was I came back with my antiquing wax from Home Decor's line, and I used that to stain the frames surrounding these little plaques. That way they look like the ceramic tile was actually framed inside of a wood piece. So while those were drying, what I did was recreate some ceramic tile images that I had found online that I really liked. It was my first time doing this, and I actually had a lot of fun trying to figure it out, as I'm still a novice in this. But as you can see here, I'm weeding out all of the pattern using my little weeding tool. And what I'm creating here is a single-use sticky back stencil. Unlike the previous one where I just removed the excess vinyl and used it as a decal, This time I am going to be removing the parts that I actually want to create the design on my piece. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want my faux ceramic tiles to actually be of a certain color, and this is a perfect way to go about doing this. If you don't have a specific color, create a stencil and you can use any paint you like. Once you have weeded everything from your stencil, then you're going to use transfer tape again and you're going to apply it on your surface. You're going to use your scraping tool in order to make sure that the stencil would adhere onto your transfer tape. Then you're going to remove the backing and then place it onto your desired surface. Once all of the stencils were adhered properly, I came in with Home Decor's chalk paint in the color Nautical. You all know that I love the color blue, and I thought for ceramic tiles, this color would be perfect. And I just used an artist brush in order to apply it gently across all of the open areas of the stencil. Once the paint was a little tacky, I took my weeding tool and I began to remove the stencil from each of the pieces. And it most likely will rip, so don't worry about it. Just keep pulling all of the pieces until they completely come off. And that was it for this really simple custom DIY. I love being able to coordinate a lot of my different DIYs, and as you can see here, this little faux cement tile looks perfect with the rest of the pieces that I made over for my coffee table. If you haven't seen that video, I'll make sure to link to it in the description box below. Okay, so I've created vinyl decals as well as a stencil, and now I am going to progress to everyday iron-ons. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love working with fabrics, and Cricut has these little pouches that have zippers on them, and I thought this would be perfect for a fun DIY. I'll be using everyday vinyl as well as my easy press for this. I saw this funny quote online and I was inspired to recreate my own for a makeup bag. Now, when working with iron-on vinyl, you have to make sure before you send it to cut that you mirror the image. This is very important. And when you make your selection on your machine for what type of material you're using, you have to make sure to select everyday iron-on. And when you go to adhere your iron-on vinyl onto your Cricut mat, make sure that the shiny side is face down. Then once your design is cut, it is time to weed off the excess. And for me, I find it easier to use my hands when removing the excess vinyl from iron-ons. I then come back in with my weeding tool to remove any of the small pieces that are inside any of the letters. Then it's off to use my Easy Press 2. Now for this, I actually have a mat that's going to protect my surface from the excess heat, and I like to use parchment paper in order to protect my surfaces whenever I'm using the Easy Press 2. Now, if you have any questions regarding what type of heat or how long to use your Easy Press for different materials, check this out. Cricut has a heat guide on their website, and all you have to do is select the type of material that you are using. For instance, in this case, I'm using everyday iron-on, and the material that I'm putting it on is 100% polyester. I am using a Cricut Easy Press mat, and then once I hit apply, it comes up with the exact temperature setting that you need, as well as the time you need to hold your Easy Press down. It also tells you how much pressure to put and if you need to flip it or not, as well as how to remove it. That's one thing I learned here, is that you need to wait till it cools down in order to remove your plastic film. I love that they make it really easy for you to find those questions regarding those heat settings. And then I just pressed it down and let the timer do its thing. And again, once everything has cooled down completely, all you do is peel off that clear film and you have a beautiful new little makeup bag. Now, if you love cushions as much as I do, you're going to love this next DIY because it's using these pillow covers for your throw pillows from Cricut. They are available in either white or a light cream color. And you might remember my Farm Fresh Christmas tree pillows that I made this past Christmas season. So I wanted to create some throw pillow covers for my daughter's bedrooms. Now I'm going to be using Infusible Ink, and some of you still might not know what Infusible Ink is. Basically, it's kind of like a decal that infuses directly into the fabric that you are applying it to. And I thought it would be perfect to create some designs for the girls. But just like your regular iron-ons, you have to make sure you mirror your image before you set it to cut on your machine. And just like the everyday iron-on vinyl, I do think it's best to pull the excess paper that you don't need with your hands as well. Now, before applying the Infusible Ink transfer, I do like to make sure that it is nice and centered on the pillow cover. Sometimes the paper likes to roll back a little bit, so I just use a closed container of paint to hold it down while I measure. Make sure that the color side of your Infusible Ink sheet is facing onto the fabric, cover with some parchment paper, and then set your heat press on go. For this, it's 385 degrees for 40 seconds. When you're done with your heat press, then you remove the paper and it should look something like this. Notice that the colors are a lot more vibrant than when you saw them on the actual sheet. Now, if you notice on my second one, there was a little bit that did not transfer on to the sheet, and that was most likely user error, but I will be covering that in just a second. You won't even tell that it's there. I thought it would be nice to add the girls' names onto each of those pillows, so I cut out their names in some everyday iron-on in gold. Again, remember to always mirror your image when doing this. And it's always good to take your time with these things. As you see here, I'm pulling them with my hand and then going back in with my weeding tool to take all of the excess vinyl that I don't need from within each of the letters. I took their names and placed them over the hearts, adjusted the easy press settings, and then adhered it onto the pillowcase as well. Here is how they turned out. For my last project, I'm creating a huge farmhouse sign for my living space. Now I am using this canvas that has been covered with this terrible material. I've literally had this canvas framed like this for like 9 years. and never used it. It was supposed to be a project for my oldest daughter's nursery, and I never did it. So I'm removing the fabric that no longer goes with my style or color scheme, and I am going to be using the canvas itself. Next, I am using some poplar boards. You know I love these. I get these at Home Depot for $1.05 a piece. They are 36 inches in length, and honestly, they're the most inexpensive route to creating your own wood frame for any piece of artwork that you make yourself. And for simple projects like this, I just use my hand saw kit, and they cut really easily. For this large canvas, this frame is only costing me $4.20. And once I cut them down, I take the time to sand all of the sides of the pieces as well as the edges that I had cut to remove any rough edges, splinters, and just to simply smooth out the surfaces. Next, I took some of my H glaze and used it as a stain for these 4 boards. While those dry, I went ahead and created my stencil. Now, the reason I created a stencil for this one is because I wanted again to use my very own color for the words that I'll be putting on this sign. Now, I decided to go with a scripture because I had come across this recently and it really spoke to me. So that's why I am doing this. If there is anything that you're going to use the most while doing any Cricut project, it's going to be this weeding tool. It just makes life so much simpler. Now, if you do plan on doing this, I'm just going to warn you a little bit. This was the first time I was adhering a stencil onto a pulled stretch canvas fabric, and I did find it really hard for it to stick. I'm sure it was because of the canvas, because it was ridged and it was old, honestly, so that could have had something to do with it as well. And when I finally got everything adhered, my biggest concern was bleed through, and I have seen other YouTubers and DIYers add Mod Podge over the letters first before painting over them. So I went ahead and did this as well. Once the Mod Podge was dry, I came in with some of my French linen gray chalk paint and began applying a layer of paint. Now, I'm not sure whether it was the texture of the canvas or that I happened to use satin Mod Podge because it was the only Mod Podge I could find. But when I was painting over the letters, it wasn't really covering that good. So I decided to give it one coat, let it dry, and then try it again. I came back in with that second coat and noticed that it was still doing the same thing. But I actually liked the way it was looking a little bit aged by not having it completely perfect. So I let it dry and then I peeled off the stencil. And then as I peeled the stencil, I came across a couple of issues that I have never heard anyone say when using Mod Podge before applying their paint. When I removed the stencil, I noticed that some of the Mod Podge was actually pulling up part of the letters because it was stuck on to the original stencil. And a couple of the letters had some pieces that came off. And so just a little warning out there for those of you who might try this technique. This may be something that happens to you too, so I just thought I'd share that experience. Now, lucky for me, I actually liked the aged look of the letters. They were already uneven as far as the painting goes, so the fact that some of the letters came off a little bit or some edges actually didn't bother me because it looked more like an aged sign. Finally, I came in with some wood glue and my nail gun and adhered the 4 poplar pieces all around the sides to create that beautiful wooden frame. Finally, I came in with a sawtooth hanger and added it to the back of it so I could hang it on my wall. Now this is a very simple sign with just words on it. However, if you want to create a more elaborate custom sign, I did create a beautiful scriptured sign for Christmas, and I created ticking stripes along 4 edges to come together at the corners to create a plaid design. So you can definitely add even more interest to your custom signs this way. I'll include a link in the description box below so you guys can check it out. And I also used a different type of wood for the frame in case you guys are looking for a different look. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you did, and if you learned something new or had a question that you had answered, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Also, let me know in the comments below which one of these was your favorite. I hope you enjoyed seeing lots of different types of projects that you can enjoy making with your Cricut Maker. And I hope it gives you a little bit more confidence when wanting to create something new with a different medium on your Cricut. Thank you so much, Cricut, for partnering with me on this video, and thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys next week with another home decor and DIY video. Until then, adios.